What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we are going to be breaking down 5 traits of a Division I level wide receiver. So trait number 1 is going to be making your releases look the same off the ball. The only logical explanation for this rep and why this DB is able to jump so far to the outside is because this receiver has worked this release before. This is going to be something called a slide release, where he's just simply putting the brakes on, sliding to the outside, and running a slant versus inside shade press. So let's break this down and talk about it. So it comes out, the ball slides to the outside, DB's able to jump, and then this wide receiver is able to get a ton of space. This is Chris Olave film from when he was at Ohio State. So let's talk about it. How many times have you seen a wide receiver like maybe Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson come off the ball where they'll slide to the outside, they kind of slow play it, this DB holds their leverage to the inside, and then they just beat him with speed to the outside, right? So this is the opposite end of the spectrum. You see Davante Adams do this a ton. He's probably the best slant route runner in the NFL. I know we're talking about Division I level receivers here, but obviously like game recognizes game. At every single level, you can bring parallels to your game, especially if you're a high school receiver listening to this or a youth receiver listening to this. So when you slide to the outside, and you've done that a couple times where you slide and just take off, that DB is going to start to feel that, especially if you're doing it like in a game situation where maybe your job is just to run off the DB. Maybe your job is just to take him out of the play. You're not even getting the ball, but you work that type of release. That sets up your slant. So the first step of this release is just a simple jab step. He pushes off of this jab step. That's the key, you guys. When that foot hits the ground, so you jab with your inside foot, you push off of the inside arch of your foot, and all you're doing is just simply shuffling or sliding your feet to the outside. I like to tell my wide receivers to drag their inside foot. Probably the only time I'd ever tell a receiver to drag their foot. But when they slide to the outside, it's the same tempo, it's the same angle, and that's what's likely to get that DB to jump. So the first trait of a Division I level wide receiver is off the ball, guys. They're not doing complicated stuff. They're making things look similar. So the release that you use for your fade is probably, or at least should be, similar to the release that you use for your slant. So that's trait number 1 of a D1 level wide receiver. Now, before we get into trait number 2, you guys, if you are a wide receiver or a quarterback watching this and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches, we are going to be traveling out to 13 more cities across the entire country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. We just got done with our camp in Orlando, Florida. We had a camp in San Francisco. Both of those camps were sold out, but then we'll be heading out to Phoenix, Arizona, Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas. All 3 of those camps are sold out as well, but we do have available spots in Las Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles, you guys. So fellas, want some more information, want to learn how you could sign up, go to that very first link in the description below. We'd absolutely love to have you out. All of our camps will sell out here probably within the next 2 months, just simply because we limit spots, because we want each athlete to get individualized coaching and training. So again, guys, very first link in that description below. We'd love to have you out. Now, let's get to trait number 2. And trait number 2 is the ability to stop on a dime. So this is a clip here from Jordan Addison before he transferred to USC, and then obviously before he plays for the Vikings. Now he currently plays for the Vikings. This is when he was at Pitt, right? Division I level program. Maybe not the biggest program, but it's still D1, guys. D1 ball is D1 ball at the end of the day. So stopping on a dime is a trait that you need on routes like hitches, curls, comebacks, maybe digs, maybe even sometimes out routes, any route where you have to drop your hips. And there's one piece of advice that I started saying with my receivers that is going to help them change direction and drop their hips, and that's thinking of your break point like you are an elevator. Okay, now I know that sounds weird, but I want you guys to think about this. You guys have all probably been in an elevator before, right? So you got the elevator hatch right here, elevators at the top. Let's say you're on floor 5 and you want to go down to floor 1. What do? You click the button and it goes straight down. That's how I want you guys to think about your hips. I think so many wide receivers, what they do is when they cut, they'll try to like reach forward, they'll lean back, they start to chop their feet, and then they gradually start to drop your hips. Guys, you want to pretend like the hatch on the elevator, like the strings holding it together broke and that thing slams straight down. You want your hips to be a violent elevator drop right at the break point. So again, you guys can do that and you guys sit yourself down. You see how Addison's hands are almost by his feet. I call that tying the shoelaces. If you can tie the shoelaces, take your hips and try to shoot them into your feet. I'm not saying lean back. I'm not saying lean forward. Take those hips and go straight into your feet and tie the shoes with your hands. And you try to do that as quickly as possible. Your breaks are going to get faster. So think tie the shoe, sit the hips into the feet, and think about that elevator drop. And that's going to help you be able to stop on a dime and be able to change direction. So that's textbook there by Jordan Addison. And that's something a lot of D1 wide receivers, especially nowadays, because nowadays in Division I level programs, they're requiring receivers to be able to run routes. Nowadays, you have to be able to change direction like this. Now, next trait of a D1 level wide receiver is they can run the hard route. So this is a question question I get asked probably at least once, probably if not a day, once every couple of days, is, Coach, how would I run a fade route versus a DB who is in zone coverage? Like if he's playing cover 3 or cover 4. Pretty difficult route, right? A lot of wide receivers, what they try to do, and they have a DB who's off, and his job is to play the deep third or deep fourth of the field. What he'll do is his job is just don't get beat deep. So a lot of receivers will just try to run around. That DB will widen him, squeeze the receiver to the sideline, and we're taking ourselves out of the play, especially if it's cover 3, which is where a DB on the outside has got a third. There's a single high free safety, not 2 safeties, only 1, and then the other corner on the other side of the field has a deep third. Guys, if we can win on a fade, that's fantastic. We can win on a fade, that's great. So if we could get behind that DB, that's even better. So when you go up to this DB, you want to use a move called a vertical set. And that's exactly what this receiver uses right here and makes this DB ultimately fall down. A vertical set is essentially just like one hard fake to the inside to try to get this DB to crash like we are running a post. Now, this guy, you guys might think, well, Coach, he's in cover 3. Why would he crash on a post? Guys, the DB's not like a robot. Like, this is not Madden. He's not just going to drop to his deep third and then let this receiver go run, and he's just going to stand there and guard the air. If there are no threats, like if there's no like wheel or corner route or anything going to his zone, and you give a hard fake on a post, that's going to make that DB crash because he's going to want to break on the post. He doesn't want to get beat. He wants to make a play just like how we want to make a play. So that hard cut that we use with my inside foot here is enough to get that guy to crash, and we're able to win over the top. So running the hard routes or making the hard routes look easy is that third trait of a D1 level wide receiver. What's another example of a hard route, right? So you guys are probably wondering that. DB in zone coverage like this, maybe outside leverage, and you have to run like a 10-yard out. So instead of just trying to like run behind him and cut, what you would do is you would attack his inside shoulder and inside hip. We would sell vertical, try to get the DB to open up, and then we'd cut under him, and then we have all this room to the sideline. That's another example of one. You got a DB who's in press coverage inside shade, and you have to run a post. What would you do? Attack his leverage, take the outside release, and try to stack him and go run your post. So those are 3 examples of hard routes right there, you guys. The D1 level wide receivers can run and can get separation on. Now, trait number 4, you guys, is going to be knowing how to manipulate angles off the line of scrimmage. So whenever it comes down to picking a press release, remember we talked about in the very first clip, you got to make stuff look similar. Yes, you got to make stuff look similar. That's super important. But also what you have to do is know how to beat the DB to the angle. So this wide receiver here, this is a former 5-star wide receiver, Brandon Inniss, who actually ended up going to Ohio State. If you guys want to look at good route running film, watch any of Ohio State's wide receivers. I am telling you right now, those guys know how to recruit great route runners. So what Inniss does here is off the ball, he closes the space with this DB and then go runs his fade. Now let's talk about why closing the space is important with this DB, because we got to get behind him. Now this is a goal line fade where he's just going to the back pylon, but this applies on a dig, on a post, etc., and it applies to those hard routes that we just talked about. Like let's say Inniss had to run a post route versus this look. DB's inside leverage for a reason. He's not going to want to get beat to the inside. So if Inniss comes off the ball and let's say his game plan is just to give a quick fake and then cut across his DB's face, as soon as he goes at him, that DB is going to do something called keep his leverage, which is essentially, my bad, you guys, which is essentially move to the inside. So that post route's going to run right into his hands, and we're either going to get rerouted way across the field, or the hands on us is going to disrupt timing with our quarterback. That's the whole purpose of a DB getting hands in the first freaking place. So what we have to do, guys, is we would want to close the space with him, bring that line of scrimmage to his toes, so when I get him to jump, I could beat his angle to the top of the route. I could take my hip and go right past his hip, so I can do what? Restack. Remember, we talked about that post versus inside shade press earlier. You want to attack him, outside release, work to stack. I can't stack unless I bring that line of scrimmage right to his toes. If I give this move where I give this like jab fake, but we're like back here on the line of scrimmage and there's this space, even if he jumps and I try to take the angle to stack, he could cut off my angle. So even more so on a fade, because on a fade, we have to get behind the guy. So that's why Inniss does that. And that's why this is a great manipulation of space. So we have to understand, guys, how to beat the DB to the angle if you want to play at that Division I level, especially excuse me, guys, especially if you're going up against DBs who are super talented, super fast, and super disciplined, okay? So now, last but not least, and this is a trait that I feel maybe some of you are waiting for. I certainly like talking about this because, I at one point I coached receivers at a high school. It wasn't my thing. Didn't really like it that much. However, something that I do miss that I don't get to do a lot of now with my current, training profession, I guess you could call it, is work on blocking with receivers. And blocking is the way to stay on the field, and that's something that they're going to expect from you at the Division I level, especially if you're a recruit who's in a run-heavy offense, especially if you're in a recruit with guys who doesn't maybe not the most talented quarterback. You run the ball a ton, you're in a wing tee, you got to block. And it really comes down to three specific things when blocking. So let's take a look at this clip here from Travis Hunter from his freshman year at Colorado. So he comes off the ball. Three things when it comes to blocking. Number one, be under control. I think a lot of guys, they come at that DB like a bat out of hell trying to make a play. All it takes is one quick juke, bam, he's around you, making a play in the run game. Number two, you got to have a wide base, right? The reason why you want a wide base is because when you get hands on this DB, you're in a little bit more stable position. And you also got to be low. I think that ties in. So like kind of low, not like squatted where you're falling over, but a slight lean forward, feet just slightly outside your shoulders, address them under control. Then last but not least, keep your feet active. You don't want to have dead feet. You want to have active feet so you could drive that DB back. If you can do those three things, you will be more of an asset in the run game. So fellas, those are the 5 traits of a Division I level wide receiver. I hope this is able to help you out. If you have questions or have other video suggestions that you would like to see from us, don't hesitate. Post those in the comment section below. We respond and answer to every single comment. So guys, we appreciate you watching. Hope this was able to help out.